Egypt has left a significant impact on the modern world for being one of the first civilizations to have their culture documented. It left behind evidence of an extraordinary infrastructure and technology for the time. Ancient Egypt was known for some incredible accomplishments. We still marvel at some of their skills, but are unaware of how they managed to do it with the limited tools they had available. Modern science can offer a couple of theories about how the pyramids in Egypt were built, but they still cannot explain everything. This is one of the big mysteries that still exist in our modern world. Some people believe that ancient Egypt was a potential destination for extraterrestrial life because their development is so unusual. It would be a great explanation for how all the advanced techniques Egyptians must have used to do everything. It is difficult to conclusively show that aliens have been to Egypt in the past, but there are signs. For example, 10 of the most exciting ones are 10. Pyramids. It's really interesting to think about how the ancient Egyptians built the pyramids. There are a number of theories, but no one is quite sure of the answer yet. They had a brilliant design and structure. This means someone was exceptionally skilled and invested a lot of time and energy into it. Egyptians somehow managed to build multiple pyramids across Egypt, although oftentimes there are many who question how this was even possible. Ancient Egyptians used pyramids as tombs for their pharaohs. The pyramids of Egypt were built using many blocks of stone, each weighing tons. Richard Koslow said, "One stone used in the statue weighed 400 kilograms. If 10 people were lifting the 400-kilogram stone, they would have to take turns because any one person can only lift 9 kilograms at a time." That may be a difficult ask. Even though the Egyptians didn't have Superman's powers, their pyramid skills were still unparalleled. It is possible that intelligently designed tools made this so precisely. Antihelium's sphere-to-equator radius is, in proportion to its original height, equal to the magnitude of phi. So how did they do it? Without any mutant breathing signs like in X-Men. Apocalypse, it is unclear how this could be done without the help of advanced technology. 9. Electricity. Ancient Egyptians left behind hieroglyphs for us to enjoy both their history and the beautifully artistic pieces they left behind. Although that's not the most important thing about them. Many people are astonished by some drawings from ancient Egypt that we had never seen until now. You can see instances of hieroglyphs in Egyptian tombs that may depict the Egyptians using electric lights, a form of electricity. The painting seems to depict people holding what appears to be an electrical lamp or light bulb. That has raised a lot of suspicion. If the hieroglyph is from ancient Egypt and it depicts an electrical lamp, then how did they discover electricity at that time? The hieroglyph indicates that ancient Egyptians may have had scientific and technological capabilities which the rest of the world didn't know about. 8. Visionary hieroglyphs. If you've only seen the light bulb hieroglyph, think again. The ancient Egyptians left behind many interesting symbols. Another company is developing more advanced technology. The image in it is very similar to a helicopter and a plane. This hieroglyph is really interesting and may tell us more about what Egyptian technology was like at the time. This question is interesting because the Egyptians didn't have the same type of knowledge that we have today. They had many ideas about life, just not flying instruments. There's always a chance that the hieroglyphs are being interpreted wrong. However, the chances of that can be low, since the helicopter image is accurate. It is absolutely one of the biggest indicators of the presence of a more advanced species. 7. Photogenic aliens on ancient money. Of all the possible indications of extraterrestrial life in ancient Egypt, this one would be the weakest. However, that doesn't mean it's undeserving of consideration. It was not uncommon for homeowners to leave small offerings when restructuring their house. One of the most common shapes for a gargoyle is a flowing, humanoid body with a head and shoulders. The depiction of a UFO on the other side of the coin is a bit strange, but it may be accurate. Some critics have contested this theory, suggesting that it may have been interfered with by believers in the existence of life from outside Earth. However, these coins are still very possible to be from ancient Egypt. There are arguments in favor of the idea that aliens may have had an influence on ancient Egypt. 6. Unusual mummy. There is plenty of evidence available to suggest that ancient Egypt may have been visited by extraterrestrial beings. One such sign is a recent discovery of a mummy in a small pyramid near Hieroglyphs. The skeleton of a penguin doesn't resemble that of a human being due to its bird-like liver and feet. You will notice that his face looks different. Dr. Victor Lubeck, a retired professor from the University of Pennsylvania, uncovered the mummy. The investigators did not know what the objects might be, but found them in close proximity with the remains. A confidential source has said that the mummy from the Egyptian Museum does not originate from Earth, and it has been a great trouble to authorities, who want to keep it a secret. The mummy acted as an advisor to Pharaoh Akhenaten. Governments refuse to admit how this discovery will affect human history, but they still haven't given any specific explanation for it. This mummy isn't the only new discovery that bolsters the alien rumors. 5. The astonishingly placed pyramids of Giza. The pyramids of Giza are positioned in a way that defies coincidence. There are 3 pyramids in the world that have outer walls rise in the shape of Orion's belt. The sizes of the pyramids are connected to the brightness of stars. 2 pyramids are twice as tall as the third, with 2 stars being equally bright. The third is only half the brightness of the other 2. The pyramids are aligned with the North Magnetic Pole. You don't think that's just a coincidence. These pyramids were built with knowledge of modern-day science, geometry, and astronomy. How ancient civilizations acquired their knowledge is an interesting question. 4. Akhenaten. Akhenaten is often considered one of the most seminal and influential innovators in religious history. Pharaoh Akhenaten was famous for turning Egypt from a polytheistic society to a monotheistic one. The pharaoh's god, Aten, or the sun disk, was worshipped. Akhenaten was so devoted to the Aten that he built a whole city just for it. In poetry from this time, the pharaoh is often seen as being visited by beings from the sky. Some have even suggested that he may have been one of these beings himself. Akhenaten was an ancient Egyptian ruler that instituted many changes in the country. He initiated a new era for Egypt. Some people believe that Zoroaster was not working alone, but rather guided by one or more deities. Doing so in a traditionally polytheistic civilization adds to this suspicion. 3. Tully papyrus. There has been a lot of speculation in the past about aliens and whether they could have influenced Egyptian culture, but few proofs that can withstand scientific scrutiny. The Tully papyrus is one such possible proof based on an analysis by an archaeologist in Italy. It's been suggested that a papyrus from ancient Egypt contains a mention of UFO. This would have been during the rule of Thutmose III. The person who wrote this papyrus claimed that there was a large fire coming from the skies. Rather than the description of the event given by the person who wrote this papyrus claims that there was a circle of fire approaching from the skies. The objects that seemed to be some kind of actual discs increased in number and then left. Former director Alberto Tully is said to have discovered papyrus. When Tully died, his belongings passed on to his brother. However, the brother died shortly after and ownership of the papyrus went missing in a way. One of the most important ancient sources that could change a lot of things we know about human history went missing just like that, or at least they want us to believe. Although there have been doubts cast over the validity of the Tully papyrus, it remains a significant document for understanding a possible connection between extraterrestrial life and ancient Egypt. 2. Hieroglyphs on spaceships. Another factor in the rise of questions concerning aliens in ancient Egypt is that Egyptian hieroglyphs were allegedly found on both the Roswell UFO and the one witnessed at Rendlesham Forest. A disputed 90-year-old UFO is coming back to life. The symbols are what make this one special because they apparently match the ones found in the 18-year-old UFO believed to have crashed in 1947. There is speculation that triangles with two spheres might be the symbol of UFO. What are the odds that two UFO that crashed 33 years apart would have similar, if not the same, symbols? If it is found that the signs are linked, it would not be a coincidence and have some serious implications about ancient Egyptian society. However, the symbols on these two objects still reinforce the suspicion that has risen on ancient Egyptian civilizations being influenced by extraterrestrials. 1. Ancient artifacts. It is rumored that people have been finding ancient artifacts when they go house hunting in the former home of Sir William Petrie, who was considered one of the greatest Egyptologists of history. The items found at his old house in Jerusalem were rumored to be of extraterrestrial origin. One of the items was a mummified body, allegedly an extraterrestrial. The other item was a painting that had symbols that couldn't be explained. The artifacts were taken from Petrie's home. They are said to be kept secret by the Jerusalem's Rockefeller Museum. As one of the best archaeologists in history, it is hard to imagine that Petrie would have hidden the items if they weren't of massive importance. His reputation has fueled the rumors of extraterrestrial life in Egypt even more. Being able to have physical proof of high importance is rare, but it's still important to remember that there are items accessible only by the public. However, these signs provide evidence that the Egyptian people were not entirely self-made and accomplished many major things together. This discovery is based on coherent reasoning that has piqued the curiosity of many, with increased investment in ancient Egyptian artifacts. The ancient Egyptians were a highly advanced civilization, but we still might not know the full extent of their knowledge. There is an ongoing debate about whether or not the ancient Egyptians had contact with extraterrestrials in the form of gods. It is possible that they copied and adapted parts of their culture from aliens in some form.